Harvard is unlike many other big schools. It is very disintegrated. There are small campuses among the households across the Cambridge area. So when I was in Dublin, I was living with an Irish family. When I was in Mexico, I was living with a local Mexican family. When I was in Vietnam, I was living with a local Vietnamese family. That really gives you that flavor of what the real culture is about.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Spill the Tea. Today we have a very inspiring guest with us, Mr. Sanjul. He holds a Master's of Education from Harvard University, amongst his other degrees, which we're going to talk about. But hi, welcome Mr. Sanjul.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here, excited to talk about my journey.
So you have such a rich academic background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your general academic journey?
So I started off my sort of career or academics based on what my areas of interests were. I started off as a software developer. I studied computer engineering in my undergrad, and I then followed the masters in doing my second degree, which was an MBA from Smurfit Business School in Ireland. And as I grew in the business strategy and technology piece, I realized that the adoption of any process, any technology, at the end of the day, it's about people. So my second master's was in education leadership, specifically focused on how people learn from Harvard University.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about, I know it's probably a long way back, but what was your inspiration for trying to get an education abroad? Your first master's was also abroad. So was your second master's. Walk us through what was your general thought process and your plan and how you got there.
Sure. So when I was doing my work at Accenture as a software developer, I realized I need to add more stakeholder management components to it, more business orientation towards the work that I was doing. And that's when I decided I'll do my MBA. One big factor, because I was doing this in 2010-11, was to be recession proof. Okay. And one of the reasons for me to choose Dublin, Ireland, was for me to do it from the best of a country.
Right.
Because usually if you're doing it from the best of a country, they are a little bit more immune to recessions. And it worked out well as well for me. I got an opportunity to work for Google right after my MBA with Smurfit.
Okay, that sounds amazing. So tell us a little bit more about your educational experience at Dublin. You've after that also gone on for another master's in the US. How was Dublin different from the general educational background that you've seen here, the educational environment? What was it like?
It was fun. I think I was the youngest kid in my class do the MBA. The first time I was seeing that a 35-year-old or a 40-year-old would be in the same program or classroom that I was in as well.
Right.
And it was a different experience because I got to learn a lot from the cohort, equally and if not more so from the professors. Right. And that is what is true for Harvard as well and other higher education institutes. The classroom that you're in will teach you way more than the content or the theory that you learn from professors. The language was a big challenge because Irish have a thick accent. So I think the first 3-4 weeks were very, very hard for me. The weather was another big factor.
Right.
But it was overall very, very exciting, very engaging. I became emotionally more intelligent as well in dealing with different kind of stakeholders as well.
How was that so? How did this help you become more emotionally intelligent?
One quick example that I can think of, saying not bad in Ireland is great, fantastic. But saying not bad in US is pretty bad. So same word can mean different things in different languages and different cultures. And that is what gave me a different perspective. And that's what gave me a sense of how people think differently. Right. You might be saying something, but you might
mean something different.
Yeah.
And it's so important to be mindful of the connotations it holds in the room you're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, higher education gives us that exposure, right? That there's more to the world than the world you've seen.
Yeah.
And it's important to be mindful of the global environment and not just the environment you're in. On that note, how many years had it been when you went on for your first master's? How many years had you been in a professional environment?
3 years.
3 years.
So I think it's recommended to have some experience before you go for your higher education. So at least 3 years of experience in working in different sectors is highly recommended because it gives you not just perspective of working with people, it also gives you some nomenclature to work on the theory as well. You can't not know what you're studying in the classroom if you're not worked on ground and worked on different business problems early on.
That actually makes a lot of sense. Do you recommend the same, that a person waits a while after their undergrad, actually gets some professional experience before they move on to their masters?
Absolutely. I recommend this to a lot of people. I am a life coach as well, and I think I work with a lot of youth and leaders. I always recommend that they should get some experience on ground, experience working in an organization, experience working in a startup before either opening their own business or startup or doing their masters outside India or even in India for that matter.
Makes absolute sense. Alright, so as a person with 2 master's degrees, what really inspired you to get 2 of master's degrees, and do you think, what's your recommendation for people considering, multiple degrees? How did it help you figure your path out, your journey out?
Yeah, I think the journey was very organic. I started off by being really passionate about programming. That's what my first degree was in, computer science engineering. And as I grew in my professional career, I realized that I need to have more business elements to my learning as well, so that I can talk to the stakeholders better, create products which are more customer-centric, business-centric, and solving business problems. And like I said, as I grew building new processes, new technologies, I started realizing that adoption is a big piece. And adoption meaning adult learning. You can create and design new projects, new processes, new technologies, but if it is not adopted, it holds no value.
Right.
So organically, it grew from technology, processes, and strategy into people, how people learn. And that's why I moved from being a generalist with my MBA to being a specialist in how people learn, how people grow.
Right. Another very important question is that, considering that you have 3 different degrees and they do have some scope between each other, so what would you say the balance is in between, say, getting a degree in a particular industry or in a particular field, or just progressing by working in that field? What are the pros and cons of these 2 sides?
So you can grow in 2 different ways in any organization. I think one is becoming a subject matter expert in that particular function, technology.
People do often have the question, what is the best way of learning or progressing in an industry?
Grow in leadership skills, strategy, processes, people. Like a typical consulting firm would make you start as a generalist, and then at the end of the day, when you become a partner, you are more into sales, people development, client satisfaction, and so on. So I think these 2 ways are the ways to grow. I know a lot of people who started off their journey with me in the undergrad, and they still are, let's say, technical architects, people who are focused on technology, core technology, and they're doing well for themselves. And I know people who have moved from the core technical journey to people management, leadership, business strategy, and so on.
Moving on to talk about your education more, was there anything that you weren't expecting or anything that you were expecting and wasn't there?
It's very hard to anticipate different cultures and different ethical dilemmas that you come across when you work with a global cohort. Specifically, when I talk about Harvard or my MBA in Dublin, it was very interesting to work with different kinds and different cultures of people. They have different ethical values. They have different definition of things that they would want to do. And at the same time, it's a very powerful experience to work with those people. In the classroom, you get so many diverse different viewpoints on one particular thing that it just adds to your portfolio in the long run. Any higher education that you do, be it at Harvard, be it anywhere for that matter, and I've studied not just at the Ed School at Harvard, and Harvard and any other good US university would give you an option to work with different schools. So I got an opportunity to work with the Kennedy School, the Law School, and the Ed School. They have different cultures, they have different way of operating. It just changed the way I solve problems.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it's all about network, and network.
That's actually a very important point. So given that you are an alumni of these different schools, what's your experience been as an alumni yourself? Do you think that the alumni network of these schools is something that's given your career a significant boost?
Absolutely. I think any great school in India or outside, they value their alumni a lot. At the end of the day, it's all about what are you trying to deliver. So for example, Harvard Ed School's motto was learn how to change the world. Education community is so close-knit, specifically when you come back to the same country, that you know almost everyone who's been part of that program. And that network is very powerful. Like I said, every higher education program that you do, network is one key component of your learning outcome.
Right.
It has helped me not just to get into jobs, but also solve a problem collectively.
Right.
There are different organizations who have different people from my cohort, my seniors, my juniors, and so on. And it's just been amazing to connect the dots looking backwards.
Perfect. So, considering that you were an international student in Dublin, what's the student life like? Is it something that's friendly for an international student? Did you find people to, bond with? Did you have friends? What was it like?
Absolutely. I think network and friendship, these are two big learning outcomes that you can get from a higher education. I think Dublin overall is very, very friendly.
Okay.
And so is Boston for that matter. There are two levels of people that you can connect with. First is people from your own community. I think people fall in the trap of just networking with people from the same country, people from the same schools or similar backgrounds. I went slightly differently. I tend to live with the locals wherever I am. So when I was in Dublin, I was living with an Irish family. When I was in Mexico, I was living with a local Mexican family. When I was in Vietnam, I was living with a local Vietnamese family. That really gives you that flavor of what the real culture is about.
Okay.
So I think one recommendation is if you can get an option to find an accommodation with the locals in any country that you go for, just a different level of experience and exposure that you get.
That's an amazing bit of advice. I don't think people usually recommend that because people actually tell you how to find your own community in the place that you're going. But I think you're going in a very different direction and advising that, okay, don't try to find your people. Actually embrace the culture that you're going into.
Absolutely.
Which I think is great advice because you need to embrace the place that you're in. You need to take it in. You need to absorb it before you come back to your own thing.
I had a home in Boston and I used to host a lot of new incoming students from India. And that was a lot of fun. So I hosted around, I think, 25, 30 different incoming students every year. And I still talk to them, I still meet them, not just from India, but from across the globe.
So, the big question. What was the experience of getting into Harvard like? What did you see as the core requirements of getting into Harvard? What do you think got you in the door?
I think you need to be truly yourself. Other than the academics, how are you presenting your profile? I think this is what we do at Athena as well. We built that framework and toolkit for helping our scholars to get into higher ed. And I think getting into the bachelor's or master's is not very different, or even PhD. You have to be authentic, having the academic rigor. You have to have the projects and the profile that you've done in the past and threading it all together and making sure that you're creating a unique narrative of who you are.
I'm also guessing that to get into Harvard school, you also had amazing grades from your previous, undergrad experience and your previous masters. What were the general tangible markers that were already in place?
So for me, it was the GRE, the scores from my undergrad, the scores from the MBA, the letters of recommendation, and I think the clarity on I pitched myself as a Harvard grad and I pitched my program to them. I went in advance. I think that always helps. So I did a precursor program. I think a lot of our undergrad scholars, they do a lot of summer programs. For me, it was doing something from the extension school as a certification program. I got the exposure. I got to meet a couple of professors, got their recommendation as well. That played a major role. And at the same time, I think my overall work experience with companies like Accenture, Google, Audi, and how do I want to tie everything that I want to learn at Harvard into what I would want to do post-Harvard, it just played a big role.
So, what was Harvard like?
That's a great question. Like I said, Harvard in itself is a very unique experience. There are different schools of thoughts when you study at Harvard from three lenses. First lens is the campus itself. Harvard is unlike many other big schools. It is very disintegrated. There are small campuses among the households across the Cambridge area. So that's one angle. I think you're not part of just one campus. You get to take classes at the business school, at the Kennedy school, at the law school. And that in itself just, makes you navigate
all
the
over
system.
The place.
Absolutely. Navigate the system in a very different way, unlike, let's say, Stanford.
Right.
Every school is different in terms of their culture, but at the same time, every school makes you feel so welcome, so warm, so involved that you build bonds which go beyond just the classroom. So that experience, added a lot of value to me personally. The second lens is the Harvard-MIT war, which keeps going. So I think we don't address, let's say, MIT as MIT, or MIT would not address Harvard as Harvard. MIT would say the school down the lake or down the river, and Harvard would say the school across the river. So I think there is that tussle which is going on. There are different football teams.
Right.
There are different groups and schools of thoughts. For example, business school will have a different mindset altogether, meaning they will take pride in the school, they will take pride in the brand, they will take pride in anything and everything that they are trying to do.
Okay.
The divinity school or the ed school, they are people first. They are people centric. They would not flash their Harvard badges. They will talk about people first. They'll talk about community first. Law school is in middle somewhere, and again, Kennedy School is school of policy. So that's a different take and angle as well. But I think that just tells you that there are different kinds of people who can coexist in such synergy. In a classroom, you would be working with policymakers, you'll be working with marketing leaders, you'll be working with education leaders and so on. And that is so powerful when you come out of it. You don't see it when you're in it, but once you're done with your program and you start bringing that experience in your real life workplaces, it just speaks volumes.
That's actually true, because when you think of Harvard, perhaps to most people, it signifies a homogeneous pool of people who are probably all very similar, but it isn't that way.
Not really. I mean, there was one class having a wonderful idea. That course been running since last 46 years now, and it just pushed the limits of the way I used to think about things. Philosophy, pedagogy, inquiry-based learning, and so on. I think, and the divinity school in itself is again a different beast altogether. We go deeper in Zen, philosophies. We go deeper in Jain philosophies and so on. Then the Harvard University, the School of Physics, that's another beast and ballgame altogether. So again, it's just very fascinating to see when you see it on ground how diverse the whole school or whole university is, while everybody just trying to get to learn and get to do things that they would want to do.
Amazing.
I was a little bit proactive because I was the top 5% of the class which got to do the program across 2.5 years. But I created my own curriculum. I think you need to know what you're going to do. Specifically, that is true for masters, because I've seen that in undergrad, it's okay to go in without knowing where you're going. But if you can be proactive and create your own curriculum, and I think there are 3,000 courses that you can choose from. You have to take 4 or 5 core courses, and then you can take 4 or 5 courses from different schools. That experience in itself is so much fun. You can just play and plug in, audit different programs and
that's amazing.
Just create your own journey.
Not many people out there do create their own curriculums. That sounds like an amazing opportunity. How do you really make sure that you're doing it right though? Because it's very easy to get distracted and get it really, really wrong while you have an amazing opportunity in front of you. How do you maintain that balance when you're trying to create your own curriculum?
So I think this is where the experience comes in play. If you got like 2 or 3 years of experience working on ground in different functions of a business, you start realizing what are the areas that you would want to work with. Essentially identifying what are the areas that you want to strengthen.
What's the niche that you want to go for?
Absolutely. I think what worked in my case is I had experience along with my master's as well, my MBA as well. That pointed me to the areas that I would want to strengthen more.
Got it.
And that also pointed me to the areas that I already know and I can just audit and score well. So you have to be very strategic.
It sounded like to build your own curriculum, you do need quite a bit of experience on the ground.
Right.
Is that something you would recommend an undergrad student tries? Because universities like Brown do give you the opportunity to build your own curriculum. So would you recommend that for an undergrad student?
I would definitely do that. I think for 2 reasons. First is if you have some experience and some exposure and some pointers to know who you are, and then you leverage those pointers and experiences to build your profile, that gives the university some confidence in you as a candidate. The second reason to do this is that you can always go back and change it. Think about it after 1 semester or 2 semesters. Fair. So be proactive is all I'll say, and it goes a long way.
Any particular advice that you have for people concerned about their fit when they're trying to do their undergrad or their masters? The concept of fit is so important these days. So any recommendations for our viewers in terms of how to determine your college fit?
I've heard a lot of people having a lot of opinions about these Ivy Leagues and specifically Harvard because they've created that persona around themselves.
Yeah.
I was just helping somebody recently for their PhD application. They were very apprehensive in, it's Harvard. Should I even consider Harvard?
Yeah.
What I'll say is there is a foot for every shoe in every campus, every college. Be authentic to yourself. I think it's big enough, it's open enough to find your own community, if not create one. So I think that question holds less relevance if you are authentic to yourself, and there will be a place for you, for sure.
Got it. Any general advice for our viewers who are thinking of going abroad, studying abroad, having an amazing career like yours? Any advice?
Join Athena. Think about it, plan in advance, be proactive. You know where your heart is. Also remember that you'll always have a second chance. Getting into Harvard or studying something is a means to an end. A lot of people tend to forget that.
Yeah.
A lot of people I have personally coached and mentored are of an opinion that, oh, this is my only shot.
Right.
It's not. You will have multiple shots. You'll have multiple chances. Do it right. Be it an undergrad, be it an MBA, be it in any other masters that you would want to do. You will have multiple opportunities to do it from the right place. So take your time and be proactive.
Thank you so much. It was absolutely amazing having you here, Mr. Sanjul. And that is it for today's episode. If you like this episode, please like, share and subscribe. If you have any questions, please drop it in the comments below. And we'll see you in the next one.